Hello, Desert Bearhawk fans. We are here with another video from the Desert Bearhawk Project, and today we're going to talk about a tool that I made to hopefully help myself expedite the build and get it done quicker, because I have, in this particular step, I have an awful lot of work to do. And I know there's other guys out there I've been corresponding with online that'll probably see this as well, and they're either getting to this step, or they're going to be getting to it soon, or maybe they've already done it and they're going to be going, why didn't I think of that? Or maybe they've already done it and said, duh, no kidding, I thought of that and I did the same thing. But if it helps somebody, great, and if you find it interesting, that's great too. So what we're going to talk about today is these vertical stringers, or excuse me, stiffeners. You can see them right there. I'll hold them right up to the camera. They're just 90 little pieces of 025 aluminum bent in a 90, and then the one side has its vertical dog-eared off. And what these do is these rivet down onto the ribs in various places and gives them some vertical stiffness. Now you'll remember in past videos I talked about these ribs and how we flange them. First of all, we put lightning holes in them, and lightning holes are not for lightning, boom, you know, thunder and lightning, but lightening, as in to lighten up the structure. And then we flange these lightning holes because they give the structure some strength, some integrity. It stiffens it up, because now you're not bending across just the flat aluminum, now you're bending across an angle, and that makes these stiffer, stronger, more, they can stand more of a compressive load without buckling, which is the idea behind these lightning holes. However, as we talked about ad nauseum on several videos, when you flange these center holes, you get a little bit of a potato chipping in the curvature here. This one's nearly flat, and then I discussed with you in another video about how we stretch the flange a little bit to get them to lay flat, and they lay pretty flat. But it's still a stamped metal thing, and you can see I can kind of tweak it back and forth. And they're stiff, but they can be stiffer. And the way that we accomplish that is that we take a stiffener that we made, and let's get that in the camera view there. I figured out that if I flipped my viewfinder around, it inverts the photo, and now I can watch what I'm doing on my little monitor here. So that's going to help me out, and maybe help you guys out too. Because nothing's worse than a guy going, yeah, and then I hooked it up like this, and you can't see his hands, so that doesn't work for anybody. Anyways, you have the stiffener here, and what we do with that stiffener is we rivet it in place right there. Now I know it's hard to see because the part's aluminum and everything's shiny, but this piece here gets riveted in between these two lightning holes, and it makes this part really super rigid and stiff. Because what's happening is when the aircraft is flying, through Brunelli's principle and aerodynamics, I'm sure I'll get hate mail 6 ways till Tuesday, because it's been long argued as to what's what. But as the aircraft is flying, pressures are applied to the skin of the aircraft. Here, usually a lower pressure here than here. So as the pressure builds here, it's pushing this rib up. The skin is pushing this rib up. And that load, that pressure that is being built, is being transferred to the aircraft spar via the attach fitting between here and the spar. And then the spar is attached to the fuselage, so up goes rib, up goes spar, up goes fuselage, up goes Dave. That's the plan. Well, what you want to do is you want to make sure that the loads are being transferred to the spar and not just being used. Take the path of the least resistance, and so will the load here. It'll take the path of least resistance, and if it can buckle this rib and distort this skin and bend and tweak and snap things, it's going to do that long before it flies Dave around, because it doesn't want to fly Dave around. It wants to be on the ground with no load. So one of the ways we make this stronger and impervious to buckling is we put these stiffeners in there, and they do just exactly what they say. They stiffen it. So I'm sure all of you are rolling your eyes by now, like, no kidding, Dave, we get it, it's a stiffener, what's your big deal? Well, the big deal is that I have 87 of these little bad boys, and each one of these guys gets 4 rivets in it, which means they need 4 holes for the rivets to go into. And I have 44, if my math is right, 44 of these nose ribs. Just the nose ribs alone, we've got the center ribs we showed you, those center ribs with the holes in it, and we got the rear ribs or the back ribs, and I don't even know if they're stiffeners, and that I haven't looked that far in the plans because I'm completely just dealing with this situation. But the point of the matter is that Dave's got to drill a lot of holes. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is that when I come to, I've got my holes in this piece. Here we go, my holes. I don't know if you can see them, but there's holes in there. I don't know, get the camera angle right. There's 4 holes in this one. When I got the holes, then I take this, the next step that I'm going to do in my process of building is I'm going to take this and I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to build some kind of fixture for this thing to sit in, so I get these stiffeners in the same spot essentially every time. But regardless of all that, I'm going to put this stiffener down on here, and then I'm going to match drill the holes that I already have. I'm going to take my drill, my air drill in my hand, I'm going to zinc, I'm going to put a hole in it, and I'm going to take a calico, one of these guys, and I'm going to calico that in position, and then I'm going to drill the bottom one here, and I'm going to put another calico in it, and then I can take my hands off and I'm going to drill these other 2 holes, and then this rib will be drilled, and it's at that point it's going to be ready to be allodyne. Well, actually we have, no, that'll come when we assemble the wing. So the rib will be ready to be allodyne, and then once it's allodyne, then it'll be ready to be assembled. But basically this rib onto itself is going to go into a bucket of acid wash and then get cleaned up, and then go into allodyne and get cleaned up. And before you know it, the little summertime romance that this part and this part was having is going to be gone. This guy's going to go back to the big city. You know, he's going to head back to the farm, and they're going to forget all about each other. And the point of that is that when I go to assemble this, if this and this are match drilled together, then they must be reunited. So the holes will line up. The problem is that if this is a unique part, that means that only this one will match up to this one, which means now I have to keep track of 42 of these and 42 of these to make sure they don't get jumbled up. And if anybody knows me, you know pretty well that that's not going to happen. So I needed a way to make this one exactly like every other one as far as those 4 holes are concerned. Plus, you know, 4 times 87, that's 320 holes, you know, sitting there with your scale going, okay, I gotta have a hole 1/4 inch, and I gotta have 3, you know, marking each one, and you know, just kill me now. This project will take 5 lifetimes. It'll never get done. So I needed a way to do this, and I needed a way to do it fast. And I can tell you that the way I'm doing it is going to be 300 times faster than this dang video, which seems to be taking forever. So I came up with a way to drill these holes so every one of these is identical to every other one of these. And to prove it to you, I've done these 2, well, actually done about 20 of them now. But I just took 2 random ones out of my little box of stiffeners. I'm going to take this calico. If you don't know what calico is, write a comment and we'll have some talks about that. I'm going to take this calico and I'm going to put it through this hole right here. I hope. This is kind of a jacked up calico. Get in there. Don't make me look bad here. I'm going to put it through there, and with calico is like a temporary fastener. And now I'm going to put it through this hole here, which this is a no-brainer because 1 hole to 1 hole, I mean, they're going to line up every time. It's 1 to 1. And 1 is the loneliest number. So like so. So far I'm a genius, but that doesn't prove anything because I have other holes here that have to line up. So here we go. I'm going to take calico number 2, and we're just going to stick it through this hole, and these calicos are really whacked. So now I've got 2 holes that line up perfectly. And I'm going to take calico number 3, I'm just going to pick a random hole and stick it in there. And I got calico number 4. And as you can see, every hole is in the same exact spot as every other hole. I was able to Coleco this thing right together. I don't know why I went one way and three the other, but the holes line up, and these are just random parts out of a box of about 20. So that means that no matter what happens with this rib, whichever one of these I grab, the holes are going to be the same. So I grab, I rivet, I throw it in the pile, and I'm not tearing my hair out trying to keep one of these and one of these mated together through several processes that are coming up. So how did I do that? Well, I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and I thought, well, I just need a way to index it and slide it on down the line here. So what I did is I took a piece of this scrap MDF, and you can see I've got some lines. Maybe you can see I've got some lines. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Nope, that's zooming out. Yeah, so I got some lines drawn here, and these are different measurements. And what I did is let's grab my bigger one here, because that's what I kind of started with. I said, okay, I know that my rivet spacing is 1 3/4. That's per the plans. And I know that the rivet, the first hole is 1/4 inch from the top or bottom, because these things are identical. So the first thing I did was I said, okay, I need a way to set a stop so I can put this part in the same place every time. So I took this, I said, well, these things are 90, they could sit along this 90, they can slide back and forth, that's good. So then I just drilled a hole here, number 40 hole, which is what we're drilling, and I took a piece of number 40 drill rod, put it in the hole, and whack it with these guys, not a hammer, please don't send me hate mail, and voila, I have a pin stop right now. So now when I slide this against it, every time stop in the same spot. Then I measured over, you can see a line right here, maybe you can see it, I don't know. There's a line there, I just put a line, and then I measured from that line over 1/4 inch, and I drilled a hole. That hole right there is the hole that the drill press bit is going to go down into. So it literally is a hole forever. So now if I put this in my drill press and I line my drill press bit up with that, and I clamp this down and I slide this bad boy in here like so, and I drill my first hole, that first hole is going to be 1/4 inch from the edge. Make sense? Makes sense. So now each subsequent hole is 1 3/4 inch down this span of this stiffener. So in order to index it, I could go, okay, line it up, but the object was to have this where they're perfect. So what I did was I measured over now, and I know some of you are going, I see what you're doing. Probably can just stop talking now because it all makes perfect sense. But I just measured over from the center line of this hole and marked in center line at 1 3/4. I set my depth from the edge of the wood at 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch. And then what I did is I put a pin in here, I put a pin in here, like so. And what I did is I actually chucked the pin in the actual tool I'm using up in my handheld drill, and I took it to my belt sander and put a point on it, so it's kind of easier to stab the hole. So now what you have is you have a pin that is 1 3/4 inch in this hole. So what happens is you come in, you drill your first hole, you pick the piece up, you slide it over, you index it on the pin, you drill your second hole, you pick it up, you index the second hole on the pin, drill your third hole, pick it up, index the third hole on the pin, drill your fourth hole, pick it up, index the fourth hole on the pin, drill your fifth hole, and bada bing, you got 5 holes in this one, or 4 holes in the smaller one, and the next one you do, the holes will be exactly in the same place as the first one, the third one, or the 87th one that you do. And that's imperative because we don't want to have to marry these two guys together like we've been talking about. So this was my prototype fixture, and I set the depth at 1/4 inch, but I didn't account for the thickness and the material, so I had to make a second one because I was running into some problems. It's real mission critical when you do this that you get this hole and this hole drilled exactly the same depth. And the way that I did that is when I put this on the press, and I'm just, use your imagination a little bit, but I basically set this hole, I drilled this hole first, then I had Jake hold the press down to the drill bit was down in this pin, so this board was now in a fixed position, and then I slid the second board fence, if you will, up to it, and I clamped it down so it can't move, and then I just simply slid my board this way until I got to where I wanted to drill, you know, until this center line lined up. So now I've maintained my depth, and I just have to worry about center line. And if I'm not 1 3/4, then, you know, bad on me. But the problem is, if you don't maintain your depth, then the piece starts to skew off as you're working your way down the path. So you want these two holes to be perfectly perpendicular to each other, or the same depth, or however you want to say it. The pinhole down here, it can be any old place, just as long as there's enough of it sticking up that it catches the end of the part. I drilled all 3 of my holes in the exact same spot because I'm just anal that way. So this is the pin for the 7.5 inch stiffener, and this pin hole here is, this one here is for the, excuse me, the 5 3/4 inch stiffener, so you can see it right there. So now everything's indexed. So now we're going to go over the drill press, and I'll show you how that works. And I'll shut the camera off because it's going to get bumpy. So here we go. Okay, so as you can see now, we're looking at the drill press with the tool that I've been describing mounted in it. So what we have here is currently I have 3 pins installed. 2 of them are in service. So you can't see the 3rd pin to the right because it's behind the drill press handle there. But this pin right here, that pin sets the, it's an end stop. So when the aluminum is slid in, it'll slide up and stop against it, sort of like so. So you can see it stops right against it. So that sets the position of the stiffener. Then in the center, you can see, sorry for the sketchy movements there while I pan around, I don't have the best tripod. You can see the bit, the drill, and the chuck. So that's my hole there, and I've been doing some work already. I've made some of these stiffeners, I've drilled them. And you can see right here, this line represents, you can see the big line, and then right next to my fingernail you can see the short line. That represents the actual end of the stiffener piece when it's in there. It's exactly 5 3/4 from the edge of this line to the pin over to the right there, that pin. So the exercise here is as I described earlier. You slide in the part, you drill your first hole here, which is exactly 1/4 inch from the edge of the stiffener on the plate there. And then as soon as that hole is drilled, you index that hole onto this pin right here. And for the distance from the center of this pin to the center of that hole is 1 3/4 inch, which is the rivet spacing for this particular part. So what you do is you drill your second hole, then move it over to the pin, drill your third hole, move it over to the pin, and drill your fourth hole, and you'll have 4 holes perfectly spaced at 1 3/4 inch, and every one of these will be like every other one of these that I've made. So I'm going to attempt to do this now for you on live recorded video, but I have to reach around the camera to get to the handle of the press, so we're going to it's going to be a little sketchy, but I think I can do it. So here we're going to hold this in position. So that's in position number 1, the first position. I'm going to start my press up, and we're going to go ahead and drill hole number 1. Piece of cake. Then we just pull this off, and we slip it onto the pin right there. Now keep in mind this is awkward for me because the camera's in the way. And here's hole number 2, and then we'll go ahead and index this over there. Oh, yeah, we're dropping metal on the floor. Hole number 3, and then finally hole number 4. Now one thing I'll tell you, if you build, wow, a lot of it vibrating off there. If you build a tool like this and you're going to do this automated type work, which is really great, as we discussed earlier in the video. Just be mindful of the fact that a number 40 bit, you should have this thing turning as fast as your press will go. You saw mine was whipping along there pretty good, but it gets to be pretty mindless. You start thinking about what you're going to do this weekend and what rumors flying around at work, and and as you're moving through this process and lining this stuff up, it's real easy to get the old finger right there. And I'm here to tell you, if you pull this thing down with that drill turning at 3,600 or 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs or whatever that thing's turning, you will drill a hole through your finger, and it'll happen like right now. So just be mindful, because it does get a little tedious. You can sit here and do these, and I've got 87 of these of this size to do, and I have 180 of them total of different sizes that I know of so far. There may be more. I haven't even looked at the flaps or the ailerons. There might be stiffeners in there as well. And the beauty of this tool is that this point and this point are fixed, and then all you have to do is adjust these points to set up your initial first hole, and then everything else is just gravy after that. So behind, well, here I'll roll the press handle out of the way. You can see behind here, here's another pin. This pin's for the 7.5 inch long stiffeners, and it sets that hole up at 1/4, and I think there's 5. I haven't done a 7.5 inch one yet, but there's 5 rivet holes in it. So it's a tool to allow you to drill these parts consistently, accurately, and have them all be identical, thereby making them completely interchangeable with any one of the other 80 or so of these that you're going to be making. So I hope you enjoyed this little tip, this little video, and until we make another one here from the shop, I will see you then.